All right, this is Thomas Grant, and I am up here with Aubrey Kelley. I think we've all heard her story over the last few months. It's a pretty heartbreaking story, and she was gracious enough to let me come up here and invade her house for a little while. And she also gave me a really yummy snack. Explain that again.
It's peach jalapeno jam that my grandmother actually made.
Peach, let me tell you, it's wonderful. She needs to sell that because she'd become a millionaire. So I think this is a great opportunity for Aubrey to tell her story from beginning to finish, and in her own words, because her story, I think, really does affect all of us in one way or another. And all of us, unfortunately, who have children could be in her position. Now, Aubrey, because of a CPO, we can't name the people that we suspect are guilty of the abuse. So we will refer to them as male and female. And at some point, I think the male's parents come into the story at some point, and we'll just refer to them as the male's parents. So let's start there. Number one, Aubrey, thank you for letting me come up here.
Thank you for being here.
And number two, kind of tell me, where did you meet the female and the male? How did you get to know them?
So the female I met at work when I was working at Sweet Aromas. I went in for an application. She was actually the one that gave me the application. She seemed very sweet. She kind of like just had like a little ray of sunshine around her. You know, every time like you were around her, she just brought the mood up. You know, we became really close through that. When we stopped working there, we hung out a lot more. I knew the male through, I didn't know him, I knew of him through an ex. His brother was really like close to him when me and the ex were together. Never really like knew of him. I've heard his name a bunch of times, but you know. Then I got to meet him through her and everything. And then, so we all hung out. We ended up hanging out like every single day.
Well, when did you roughly, do you remember when you started working at Sweet Aromas?
It was like August of 23, I think.
Okay.
Around there, or maybe. Yeah, it was like August, so because it was right around fall time.
Okay.
So, like I said, like we started like hanging out every single day. We did a lot of things together. I ended up doing their engagement pictures, and then she was supposed to, that's what, around the time I found out I was pregnant with my son, and she was supposed to do like our gender reveal and everything. So I mean, like, they were really good friends. They had kept both of my other kids like on numerous occasions, and it was never something like I asked of them. It was always like them asking us. Like, they always wanted to keep them, and it felt really good to have somebody that like cared for your kids like that. So, you know, it was like one of the situations that like you just didn't assume anything, and you didn't really like think of it ever being, because like, why would you ask to keep my kids if like you were a violent person,
right?
You know? So yeah, like I mean, like I said, like we got to know each other really well, and it was.
And she started babysitting Bo.
Yes.
How long before December, roughly?
I think so. I think in September is when she started keeping them, which I know it seems like, you know, pretty soon, like after meeting them and everything. But like I said, like you kind of like when you hang out with somebody every day and everything, you kind of assume you have a good like your perception on them,
right?
And like I said, like every time my son or either of my kids were around them, it was like they just lit up. Like their personalities just like came out very much. They all seemed to click with each other.
So prior to December, I mean, there was no red flags. There was no they were friends of yours.
Oh yeah, and like I said, like my kids, like kids are usually the people, like the ones that like set off the red flags immediately first. And my kids never, like, they never cried around them. They never seemed like to not want to go to them. I mean, they were very close. They all bonded like very well. Like it was, like I said, like one of those situations as a parent where you see like that kind of like bond with somebody else, and it kind of makes you feel good, you know, that somebody cares about your kid.
Yeah, as a parent, it's nice to find people that you trust.
Absolutely.
So, and you know, through the friendship, through working with the female for a while, up until you guys left that job not long after you met. Or?
Yeah. So I think we both stopped working. I stopped working before her. It was probably around like November, I want to say, like early November. No, it was a little bit before that, like late October
Okay.
type of time, like when we both were
So
done
even when you
working
stopped working together, you were still friendly.
Oh, yeah.
You still talked to each other a lot.
Yeah, they were the only ones that, like, came around for my birthday. Like, they showed up for my birthday dinner. They got me a gift, everything. Like I said, like, I mean, like, they were really, really close friends.
Okay. So and I think before we move forward, I think a lot of parents can relate to that. I mean, number one, it's hard to find people you trust, and finding a friend on just a random babysitter on Facebook or wherever on the internet, it's a little nerve wracking as a parent. So you feel much safer when you feel a connection to the people, and you feel like you know them. So I can certainly relate to why, hey, they offered to watch my son. I'm going to let them do it if I feel like it's a safe environment. So December 12th, December 12th, 2023. Kind of take me through that day leading up to you dropping Bo off at the male and female's house.
So, prior to that, like, for that entire week, the female, she had been kind of like, down. She was going through a little bit of a rough time. And so on December 12th, I was actually in class at the time, and when she had messaged me, asking, she said something about, like, I'm having a really rough day. Can I get Bo and keep him? And this wasn't, like, out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Her and Bo had a really strong connection with each other. So, when she was having a rough day, it was, like, pretty common for her to just want to be around him. And, so, I told her, I was like, I'm in class until, I think, like, 3. And I was in Lima at the time going to class. So I was like, I had to pick him up from my other babysitter, and then I could bring him straight to you when I get out. It'll be around like 4:30. And she was like, okay. And like, that was about the end of that. We made the plans.
And just to be clear, this is nothing uncommon.
Yeah, no, this was very common. They had kept Bo like for like 2 days straight at times, because like it would come to like, the next day I'd be like, okay, I can come pick him up whenever. And she'd be like, oh no, can we please keep him from another night? It was like, it was very common for them to like want to have him.
Okay.
Or my daughter too. Like, I feel like my daughter and the male were a little bit closer, which like also was like, it was a good feeling, because like you could tell like there was no harm intended in it. When I say that, like, people would be like, oh, that's kind of weird. It really wasn't.
Right.
It was just they had that bond. So he was always wanting to keep my daughter, and like they both like loved my kids. So yeah, there was nothing strange and nothing that like threw a red flag to me. So when I picked him up from my babysitter, they only lived like, I'd say like 10 minutes away from each other. So I went straight from my babysitter over to her house, got my daughter out, got my son out, went inside, gave her kind of like the rundown that as a parent does, this is how his day went, this is how he's been, like, kind of like giving her like a heads up of how like, her night could play out. My son was a little fussy at that time, but my babysitter had said like he had just woken up, so that was kind of normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like didn't really think anything of it. I was like, okay, as soon as I leave, he'll be fine. I had left and I came home, and it was kind of like a normal night for like the most part. My husband came home, we were sitting down watching a movie, and we had just put my daughter to bed. And so, she sent a picture of his face, and like, that's when like she was like, oh my gosh, his face is red. Like, do you know what could have happened? He just woke up. Him just waking up was also really like off. That was like kind of what set off the first red flag for me, because I kind of like looked at my husband. I was like, what do you see from this? And
real quick, what time was that? Do you think
that was? I think it was probably around 8. I have the pictures right here.
That's fine. Yep. Go ahead and.
9. It was around 9.
So 9 p.m.
Let me see. I have the messages somewhere in this whole thing. Okay, actually, it was 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
So she sent that around 8, and then that's when she was like, like his face is red and everything. So I immediately called after that, because I was like, I didn't really want to talk about it over text message. I don't know. Like, it was just easier to call, like, as like a concerned parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like asked her, I was like, did your cat attack him, or like, was he rubbing on the cat? Like, was it an allergic reaction?
Mm-hmm.
Did he fall at all? And she was like, no. Like, saying that he was just asleep the entire time. Like, he had just woken up. Like, all she did was give him warm milk. At this time, she didn't even tell me, like, that she was in the shower. She didn't tell me that she was doing anything. Like, it was just, he just woke up like this.
So pretty much leading you to believe you dropped him off and he went to sleep.
Yes.
And he woke up at 8 o'clock and his face is red.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I asked her if she would send me another picture. She said that they were on their way to the store at the moment to get cream for his face, which that was also kind of like, I thought maybe like if she thought it was an allergic reaction, maybe like that's why she was getting the cream, like to help with like, because sometimes like allergic reactions can burn a little bit. So I thought maybe that was like it. Like I said, I wasn't really thinking anything negative at this point because of the fact that like I just never would like have assumed that.
Right.
So then around, it was probably a little bit after that, I asked her if they were home. She said that they had just gotten the cream and that they were on their way home. And then I said, send me a picture as soon as you get home. About 8:56 is when she sent me another picture of his face. And it, like the pictures were kind of like, you know, more forward facing.
Yeah.
So like you couldn't really tell what was going on. But in my heart, I was like, I kind of like looked at my husband again. I was like, we should probably just go get him. Like, because if it was an allergic reaction, we would need to know. So we need to take him to the hospital. You know, especially if, you know, he did wake up like that and he's having an allergic reaction. You never know. With kids, like, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
So I texted her. I was like, we're just going to come pick him up, you know. And that's when she was like, okay. So I had to go wake my daughter up, get her packed up and everything like that. It was in the middle of winter, so it took a minute. So that's why, you know, we didn't get there until it was about 9:30ish when we got there. I walked in and every single light except for the stove light was on or off. So like it was kind of like dim and like which that was kind of out of the ordinary.
You say that wasn't normal?
No, because usually they had like their lights on when I would go over there and everything. But their bedroom light and the bathroom light was on, and their bedroom and bathroom were like right across from each other. So like it is in the back of the house. So like the whole back half was like lit up, but like that area, and they were out cooking. They were making a pizza. So that's why it kind of like threw a red flag. Why are you guys out here in the kitchen and the living room and everything playing with all the lights off?
Right.
But you know, once again, like in my head, like I just wasn't thinking of that, and I didn't immediately like look at his face because I didn't want to like point a flashlight on it or something like that, and then like make it like seem like I'm accusing him of anything. Because then if it wasn't anything, then it just like it would have
create drama and stress between you and him. Yeah.
And like I mean, like they were really good friends of mine, so I didn't want that. You know.
Again, at this point, no suspicion of anything wrong happening to your son.
And like when I walked in, you know, they were both like, you know, talking to me and everything like that. Like in my head, like if they would have done something, they would have been pushing me out the door with him real fast. And they weren't. Like, you know, I sat and like talked to them, like was asking them like questions about like how their night went and everything like that. Like, has he ate? You know, what was going on? You know, they like kind of were just like, you know, like he's been asleep, whatever. So then I walked out to my car, and my husband had gotten out to help me load him up and everything, get everything in. And so that's when I turned the flashlight on and I looked at it. I kind of like looked at my husband and I was like, does this look like what you think it look? What I think it looked like? Are you getting the same vibes here? And he was like, yeah, I mean, like it looks bad, but like, you know, it could. He was also trying to like, and that's the thing of like, you know, when my husband's trying to make, that's how you know we trust these people so deeply, because he's usually the one that wants to jump on the ball immediately. Like he's very protective over our kids. So like he was like, you know, it could possibly just be a rash that formed weird. It could be, you know, maybe he slept on something, you know. So like we both, it sounds really bad, we both were trying to make up any excuse to like avoid like thinking that way. I had sent pictures to my mom and one of my friends, you know, prior to this, like asking what they thought it was, and they both even said, like, my mom was like, you know, it could be hives or anything, because my mom also knew how close we were. And my other friend, she was like, you know, she kind of felt the red flags of it, and so that's why I was like, kind of like, you know, very teeter-totter of it all.
Right. So it's kind of hard for you and your husband, and even your mom, it sounds like, to really look at these people
as anything other than like trusting and
right
hearing people.
Right. Okay. So okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So yeah, no, I mean, like, it was definitely something that like we didn't want to put in our heads. I had taken a picture, you know, right outside of their house. I mean, like it was like we walked out and I took a picture immediately. I sent it to my mom, and my mom was like, oh my gosh, like that's when she kind of felt the red flags. And then my friend, she's like, oh hell no, like that's not So then it was like 10 o'clock at this point, 10:30ish. It had been closer to 10. They were both asleep in the back of the car, which also was the reason why that led me to believe he was not sleeping the entire time, because, you know, for him to fall asleep immediately in the car after just waking up, you know, kids don't do that.
Right.
So they were both asleep, and like I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it to overnight. Maybe it'll clear up. Maybe it is just a rash that we're all overreacting about, and he'll be fine in the morning.
Right.
So I got them home, put them to bed and everything. The next morning, I woke up super early because like it was just on my mind. It was like 7 o'clock when I woke up, and it was a day that like I wasn't supposed to be up at that point. And I woke up and I went and looked at him, and while he was still laying in bed, I immediately snapped a picture because I knew right then and there. I mean, it had formed way more, and it had bruised at this point. So I got him up, got my daughter up, and got them loaded up in the car, and I called my aunt, who is a sheriff in a different county. I called her. I was like, where do I go about this? Like, do I go to the sheriff's office? Because that's where I was going immediately, is the sheriff's department. And my aunt was like, no, you have to go to the police department because it happened within city limits, you know, all this, that, and the other. So I went and dropped my daughter off with my other babysitter and went to the police department, filed the report and everything, you know, did what I had to do. He told me that I had to take him to the hospital, which I was already going to. So I took him to the hospital. They all were like, yeah, that looks like handprints. Even the officer said that it looked like handprints. It was clear as day.
Right.
So the hospital had contacted CPS per, like, you know, they have to.
Right.
And then, you know, they took their pictures and did everything, gave me some suggestions of what to do. After that, I didn't really hear anything for a little bit from the officer. I turned in, like, all of my, like, things I had to, like, he asked me, like, the hospital records and everything. But then I went quiet for a really long time until I had called to see, like, where they were at, and the dispatch lady, she was like, oh, well, he's in training right now, so, like, you know, I'll have him call you back when he can. It had been about a month before they even talked to the male and female. It was actually, I think, a few days shy of a month before they talked to the male and female.
Now, between them being questioned, was there any communication between you and the male and female?
So the female had asked me a couple times, like, how he was doing, like, within, like, a couple days. I blocked her, I think, 3 days after the event happened, because I didn't want any communication with her at that point. I knew what she did, and I also was not going, in the messages, a lot of people were like, oh, you're being too nice, but I wanted to give them an excuse so that they would possibly give themselves away. Maybe they would have admitted to it, like, okay, yes, you know what, like, I did, you know, I wanted to give them the opportunity to, like, give me something. So it wasn't that I was trying to, like, you know, be overly nice, but in that moment, I knew I had to be level-headed to get somewhere, which obviously didn't get me anywhere. But, you know, I was just doing what I needed to do as a parent. And anybody that knows me from the past knows that they're lucky that they did it a year when they did it, because a year later, before, it would have gone down differently.
Different reaction. Right?
So like I said, like, everyone that knows me knows that they are lucky for, you know, when the timing. Like I said, like, I had a lot going on. My son needed me really bad.
Was there any comments before you blocked the female or male? Was there any statements from them to you that made you kind of?
Them just, like, continuously saying, you know, I feel so bad that this happened in my care. Like, she had mentioned that, I think, like, 3 or 4 times, saying, like, that she felt so bad that it happened in her care, or I was supposed to be taking care of him. This was my responsibility.
So to be clear, they never said any indication to you that, well, his face was messed up when you dropped him off.
No.
They never made any reference to maybe someone else being at the house when they were there. Like, there was, as far as they were saying, they had him. And this obviously came up when they had him.
Yeah.
And they really didn't have any other excuse other than to say the only thing he was doing there was sleeping. Did that ever change with you?
Yeah, so, like, after she had said that, she sent a really long message at some point. stating that basically, I'm not sure. These papers are all my stuff. Up here. She said, like, because after, like, I had said something about, like, just be honest with me, like, did you hit him, or did, like, the male get upset and hit him, you know, like, I just need something out of you guys, like, that, you know, explains this. And she sent a really long message basically saying, okay, well, now he was running a little bit and he fell a couple times after you dropped him off, but he didn't cry. And then, like, saying, he said, like, right here, he was sleeping the whole time. When he got here, we were playing, like, running around, and he fell a couple times, but he didn't even cry. He just kept running. And then she said, I don't know what to tell you. I feel uncomfortable because I've taken care of these kids. It does hurt me that this is happening because I was taking care of him like I was in charge. But I don't know what to tell you. He was asleep most of the time he was at the house.
So the night it happened, there was no reference to him running and falling at all.
No.
But this afterwards, then it was, well, when you kind of pushed her a little bit saying, okay, what happened? Something happened.
Well, and I think, like, she used that as an excuse because in the prior message I said something about, you know, maybe he fell, maybe he upset you guys, maybe the cat got, you know, like, I was trying to give her things, like, to, you know, like, give me something. Right. So I think that's when she, like, was like, okay, I'm just going to take this and run with it. So, yeah. Like,
so when were you made aware by the police department when they questioned the male and female?
They had told me that they, like, talked to them. The officer, like, you know, was, like, saying that there's inconsistencies in the story. He didn't really believe what they were saying. He could tell that they were lying and trying to, like, cover something up. He never really, like, told me what was said, which I don't know if that's, like, you know, like, part of, like, their rules or something.
Right.
Like that.
I mean, maybe he just didn't want to share, but he did share with you he didn't believe their stories.
Oh yeah, he made it very clear that they weren't telling the truth.
He was leaning toward. Did he ever kind of indicate to you he thought they did it?
Oh yeah, like he like I said, he made it very clear that he did not believe them. He also made it clear, like, you know, he was like, you know, something tells me that they are telling the truth and that they probably did it. You know, with your pictures and your proof and then their statement, like, I'm very much, like, not believing their side.
So after they were interviewed and he had that discussion with you, what happened? Like, did he make any promises to you about this is what we're going to try to do going forward?
Yeah, so he had told me after that, I was actually the one that had to get a hold of him to figure this out. He never reached out to me. So I had reached out to him and, like, you know, asked him about the whole situation. He was like, at that time, he was like, our next step is to get a detective and do a polygraph test. You know, we're going to reach out to them and see if, like, they'll, like, agree to this and everything, to a polygraph test. But, he had told me that a detective was going to get involved and, like, you know, all, like, that stuff. And I told him that I agreed to the polygraph test. Like, I was perfectly fine with doing it. Like, that I was honestly willing to do whatever they needed me to do at that point. Like I said, it had been an entire month since this situation, so I was way more aggravated now. So then after that, I kind of just didn't hear anything from them for really.
No, I just want to backtrack real quick. Now, when you went to the hospital in December, was there any involvement with CPS? You said they were called.
Yeah, CPS. I cannot remember exact dates that they did come here. I want to say that they didn't come here until February, but I could be completely. It was so long ago that I can't really remember. I do remember we had a date set up. They were supposed to be here at 5 p.m. on a certain day. 5:30 rolled around. I was sitting here waiting for them. They never showed up, so I had to call them, and that is when the guy that was supposed to come, he had told me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I got caught up with something else. We need to reschedule. I'm so sorry. I meant to call you." So then we had planned to set up for a different day. I never heard anything. And I think, like, it was like a week or two after all that, he ended up just showing up at my house.
Okay.
And he came and he did his walkthrough. He did what he had to do. Told me that, you know, like, we had sat down and had our talk. It was like a good, like, hour and a half, like, of the investigation with him. And he was like, I don't have any concern. You know, your house is one of the cleanest houses I've walked through. You know, all this stuff. Like, you know, he gave me the rundown of, like, he really felt safe like that. I wasn't.
Okay. So just clear, I mean, just so everyone knows, the CPS did follow up with you.
Mm-hmm.
Did they make any reference, or did you ask them at that point, or at any point, are you going to check out the babysitters?
I never asked them because the officer had said they were supposed to be investigated by the by CPS. So like I didn't question CPS very much. You know,
That's really not your role. Yeah,
right. Yeah. No, they basically just told me they were closing the case on me. So then in my head, I automatically assumed that they would, you know, go and investigate them after my case was closed.
Right.
I knew that they had to investigate me first. You know, they had to rule me out as that. So like I said, I just kind of assumed that they were going to go investigate them. You know, a child was harmed at this point.
Right.
CPS is like positioned to go do that. But then they never did. So
now I got one other follow-up question about that time frame. They questioned the male and female. You were interviewed by CPS maybe a month or so after the male and female were interviewed by the police. Yeah. At any point were you ever questioned by police about any? I know you gave a statement, but did they ever bring you in for a formal question? Mm-mm. You mentioned a full-time babysitter.
Yeah.
That Bo was at just shortly before you dropped him off at the other babysitters. Mm-hmm. Did they ever question that babysitter to your knowledge?
No, but I do want to make this clear because she has mentioned this. She has been our babysitter for 3 years, and she is absolutely amazing. She is everything you could ever wish for in a babysitter. She won't even raise her voice at my kids. I mean, like, she's just down to earth, and these kids are spoiled by her. So I want to make it very clear. It was not her at all.
Yeah, and I did not want to infer that. I just, I'm not a cop. You know, I have no knowledge of investigative tactics, but as a layman I've watched TV shows, so I mean, I know a little bit. You would think they would kind of interview everyone who had contact with Bo that day, and to your knowledge, they never did.
No, they did not. I mean, like I said, like, you know, I would expect them to, like, you know, do an initial interview with me. They got my initial statement, but they never did an interview with me, or my husband, or, you know, like the babysitter. Mm-hmm. They did that one interview with the male and female, but, you know, other than that, no, nothing was done.
So you talked to the officer when was it in January he talked to you?
Yeah.
When's the next time he reached out?
So let's see. I have all the papers. I think it wasn't until August the next time I heard from him.
August.
Yeah. So this was December 23rd, August 28th. Yeah, so January 6th was when he said something about the medical records being dropped off. Then January 7th was when they finally got a hold of the male and female. And then August 28th was the next time I heard from him.
So 8 months went past.
Yeah.
What had happened in that 8 months for you? How were you handling everything?
Well, I had called multiple times because, like, people would, like, make references to it. And then, like, also, like, you know, I obviously wanted something done. I was also dealing with a lot in that moment. I had a very traumatic experience happen with me with my now other son. Mm-hmm. My water broke at 25 weeks. I was in the hospital for 2 months straight before my water broke. And so from February, like the end of February all the way until March, like the end of March, I was in and out of the hospital a lot. And then he was in the NICU for 12 weeks. So in that time frame, you know, there was so much going on. I was trying to make calls in between all that. He didn't get out of the NICU until May. And I remember making a phone call to them in May before he came home. You know, seeing if I could have any information. Never got a call back. And I had, like, I mean, everything was documented. Mm-hmm. Every single phone call was documented. Every time, like, I made, like, anything, like, gave them anything, it was documented. Like, just even little tiny things was all documented. Yeah. And there's no documentation in between. So
what happened in August?
In August, so one of my friends had saw the female at a baby shower. This was when I was doing my travel STNA, so I was all the way up in Tiffin, at one of my jobs, and she had reached out to me. She was like, the female is here at this baby shower, is one of the WIC things that they throw baby showers for. So she was like, this female is at this baby shower, and this friend had been very, like, she was very on top of, like, the situation as well. So she told me, she was like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm at work. I want no part of that. Like, you know, like, I'm trying to, like, do what I have to do. And so then, I guess a confrontation was made in that moment with my friend and her. Basically, my friend stating, like, you're an abuser, and, like, you know, she was very angry, understandably. In that moment, also, the abuser, I guess, came back at my friend and said, well, you know, there's proof that Aubrey did it. So then that obviously upset me. I immediately was like, are you serious? Okay, cool. So then I made a Facebook post, and this was on a Thursday. Yeah, it was on a Thursday. I had made a Facebook post, you know, like, about them, saying, oh, so you want to say that it was me, but, you know, here's all your proof that you need that it was you. So then that's when on Friday I was served with the court order CPO. Yeah, so the very next day I was served with the court order CPO. I had came home from work the next day with something on my door saying that I had to go to the sheriff's station immediately and pick up these papers.
So this was shortly after I had, I think, first heard the story.
Yeah.
Because I think
that Facebook post that I made that with their names in it and everything, that was when you finally reached out to me and everything.
Okay, because I do remember you getting the CPO paper, and I was like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? So the premise, just to kind of clarify, because I didn't understand, the premise behind them getting the CPO, I'm guessing, is because your friend kind of verbally confronted her.
Yeah.
That was the excuse they were using to get a CPO against you.
Yeah.
For that confrontation.
Yeah, so they said that, like, because of my Facebook posts, they were getting a lot of threats and everything, because I put their names out there. So I mean, it was very frustrating, because I was like, you know, I made a Facebook post, you got threats from other people. Getting a CPO me is honestly probably going to make it worse rather than better, because now people are going to be angry that you are trying to avoid.
I want to use this segue real quick into, you know, you have the report and the questioning of the male and female subjects with the male's parents involved in that questioning. I got a copy too from the police department, and I read it, and even in January they were saying that they were getting threats.
Yeah, that was from another Facebook post that I made, the initial one, the very first one that everyone got.
Yeah, and the police officer said in that statement that in your post you didn't accuse anyone, and he asked the people involved here to take screenshots of these threats and show him. And from everything I never seen where any of that was submitted. Right. So I just it's kind of following the same storyline. They're getting threats. Yeah. In January and now.
I do know that they were getting threats. I will fully admit to, like, you know,
in August too. Or?
Yes. So it's not funny, but it's funny. I don't condone, you know, all that, but you know, you do whatever you need to do. So I remember when I made it in January, because I had a lot of people who reached out to me. I too did end up with receiving threats from people too, because I didn't do enough to protect my child, which, you know, is what it is. You know, people are gonna have their own opinion of what you should have done. That's one thing that really frustrated me though, was hearing, oh, well, if it was my kid, I would be in jail. No, you wouldn't. I'm gonna promise you that, because I used to be that person that said, oh, I wish somebody would. I would be in jail. No, you won't, because when you're in that situation, you don't know what you're gonna do. And I'm going to promise you that your kid's going to need you. And I don't care if you have a good parent that they love, or you know, grandparents, aunts, uncles, spouse, whatever. No kid is going to need anybody as much as they need their mom. Right. And so in that moment, that's where you have to really step back. And plus, I was pregnant at the time. I wasn't going to risk my child that I was pregnant with.
It's almost like that keyboard warrior mentality.
That's exactly what, like, you know, it always was. And it was a very, like, I tried to, like, understand, you know, why people are saying that, because, like I said, I used to be the same person that said that. But then you, like, you know, being in that situation, you really want to, you really want to tell them, no, you wouldn't. Right. And then, but, you know, that would just, like, cause a huge stir up. So it's like, you just kind of there was so many people that reached out to me that I felt bad for not reaching back out to. but it was just so like, you know, overwhelming about the like all like, and it was so much support that it felt great.
Right.
But it's like, you know, when you have so many at one time, you know, you can only like really get to certain things.
You're right. Now, so we'll go back to August. So you get the CPO paperwork on your door. Mm-hmm. The hearing was probably a few days after that?
That Monday.
So how did that hearing go?
So when we were in the hearing, when I first walked in, I noticed that they were in one of the rooms with somebody talking, and so then I had to sit in a room next to them, and then they pulled us into the courtroom. They got their chance to talk, and then they basically, like, throughout it all, they kept saying, oh, the case has been closed, like, we cooperated with the police. We're the ones that went in on our own, which in that statement shows that they didn't go in on their own. They had to get called.
Correct.
And then they had said that, like I said, I kept saying the case was closed, and I was like, the case is not closed. Like, it's just been untouched because the officer decided to drop the ball on this.
Right.
They tried to say that I did it. And
in CPO court?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was also, like, in that moment, I just had to really breathe through it because I was like, you guys are right there in my face. The parents got to speak in the CPO court because they also brought their parents to this. I noticed that they brought his parents to literally everything, but you're a grown-ass adult. Why are you bringing your parents?
Right.
Grow some balls. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
But, so, I mean, it was kind of just like, they kept saying, oh, well, they had to come stay at our house because they felt like they weren't safe at their house, which I never, like, you know, put out their address or anything like that, ever. Not one time. If you felt so threatened with your life that you had to go stay with it, like, somebody else's parents, I don't genuinely feel bad for you, because while you were just receiving threats and you were scared for your life, you were hitting my kid.
Right. There was a child that was abused.
Yeah, like, yeah. Oh, you're scared for your life because you're getting threats? Okay, well, you hit my kid, I don't feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, really, if you boil it down, yeah.
Your threats don't compare to what you put my kid through.
You didn't threaten Bo. One of you hit him multiple times.
Yeah. So it was.
So unfortunately, the CPO was upheld.
Which, okay, so that actually, like, yes, I'm very upset that the CPO is upheld. I get why, because of the threats. Like, they just didn't want me putting the name out, but the magistrate, like, kind of was like, they asked for 5 years and she said 1 year. So, I mean, I think she was kind of like on my side with that one. Like, she understood where I was coming from, so she didn't give them the 5 years. But she knew that if she didn't grant it, it could come back on her because of the threats that were being made because of my Facebook post. So I get it, but at the same time, it was kind of just, like, frustrating that it was, you know, granted in the first place. I had spoke to the officer that stood in that courtroom, I think a couple days after that, because I could tell on his face in that moment that he was also upset and he felt like, you know, something was off. So, I went in a couple days after, because that's when I started gathering all my information. I mean, down to the T of everything. So, I walked in and he was at the, you know, where you walk through, like, the metal detectors and everything. And I spoke to him. I was like, you know, I kind of saw your face. And he looked at me. He was like, yeah, I saw the pictures. Hearing what they had to say, they did it. Right. He was like, it's very frustrating on my part because I had to just stand there and then, like,
listen,
you know, And he actually pointed me in the direction of, like, you know, where I needed to go to, like, speak to, like, somebody to get the ball rolling. He was like, I'm going to suggest you go talk to this person. Like, you know, like, I really, like, believe that they'll get something going. So I really, like, shout out to him. I don't remember
that
his
had
name.
To make you feel good that someone in a position of authority believed you.
Yeah, well, and that, yeah, no, absolutely. Like, you know, hearing that and, like, how kind he was about it and everything, because I said some nasty things walking out of that courtroom.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And so, like, I had also apologized to him about that. I was like, yeah, I just want to, like, apologize. I was very upset. He said, you should have been. Like, he said, I understand completely why you were. Like, that was absolutely ridiculous just to hear.
Right.
And so, like, you know, it was really nice, like, you know, to have somebody, like, you know, kind of just have my back.
So the contacts that he gave you, did that help you?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of what got the ball really rolling after that. After the CPO hearing and everything, I went and spoke to, that's when I went and spoke to Sergeant Lapp, which is who he pointed me in the direction to. When I spoke to Sergeant Lapp...
And to clarify, Bellefontaine Police Department.
Yes, Bellefontaine Police Department. he seemed very frustrated that they had gone silent for so long, because he walked out there with a very, like, just the initial of, like, you know, like everything from back in January. He said, "You haven't heard anything since January?" I was like, "No." He said that he would speak to the chief of police. He had me fill out a personal, like, complaint about an officer, and then he said that he would talk to that officer's superior. So that's when, I think like 2 nights later, that's when Officer Perk finally called me. Had every excuse under the sun of why he hadn't gotten a hold of me. Oh, I just got busy and we had other things, and I had a bookload of things to do and all this, that, and the other. And I was like, okay.
It's a little professional gaslighting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's what this whole entire thing felt like through everybody. It was just like gaslighting back to back to back. So yeah.
So the investigating officer did respond back to you in August.
Yeah.
Was there, and you made contact with the sergeant? Did you ever speak to his superior officer, or was that just?
Yes. His superior officer actually called me before him. Actually.
Okay.
I do remember that now that you said something. And he had said that you know, he spoke to Officer Perk and everything like that. He should be getting a hold of me. He formally apologized as well. On his behalf, he was like, "I'm so sorry that you know you had to go through that, and that you haven't heard anything. This is very unprofessional. As officers that are doing the investigation, it is their job to reach out to you, not your job to reach out to us."
Right.
So, you know, and that, once again, felt really good to have somebody, like, you know, that was...
To that point, you had to be a little more optimistic that maybe something was going to happen.
Oh, yeah, and that's exactly... I was literally, like... And every time I talked to somebody about it, I was like, I think that, you know, we're finally going to get somewhere. I think we're finally going to get, like, something done about this, you know. I felt really good about it at that point, because now, like, you know, you have all these people that are reaching out to you, apologizing because they've read the report now, they've seen the pictures now, so they obviously know what happened. So now you're like, okay, these people are, like, you know, trying to get things rolling because they know that something was foul play.
Right.
So, and like, I was like, we're finally getting somewhere.
Yeah. So you had to be, you know, hoping, and I do remember conversing with you roughly during this time. I mean, and I was, you know, hearing from you, I was optimistic that justice was going to happen here.
Oh yeah.
You know, even though it was delayed, hey, as long as the guilty people get held accountable, that's really the important thing, right?
Right.
So when did you start to kind of get feedback that wasn't looking good as far as justice?
Officer Perk reached out to me again. I don't know how much longer after that. I had went and submitted, like, a bunch of paperwork, like whatever's laying on my couch right now is everything that I went and, like, gave to him. A lot of it was repeat things, but, like, I wanted to make sure, you know, I had everything there. And so, you know, I had turned in messages between me and my mom, me and my friend, screenshots of, like, timestamps. I had sticky noted everything and explained everything, you know, like, I wanted to make sure that there was no missing pieces in this. So then shortly after that, he had said that he had sent it to the county prosecutor because he asked me what I wanted to be done. I was like, I want them to be punished to the most extreme punishment that they can get. So he said that he was going to push for a federal crime. And so he had sent it to the county, and then he called me. He said, well, the county declined it and sent it down to the city.
So to clarify real quick, it was pushed to felony court.
Yes.
And the felony prosecutor, which is Eric Stewart, declined to pursue it for a felony, so they kicked it down to the city prosecutor, which I forget her name.
It was Crystal Welch, and they were going to pursue misdemeanor charges. Yes. Okay, so what did you find out from that? I can't remember. Let me pull up the day that he called, the night that he called me. He called me on the 5th of October, and told me that no charges were being pursued at all. The city decided that there wasn't enough proof to press charges, so nothing was going to be done. And then he told me that I needed to talk to the prosecutor to find out why. I was very upset. I ended up just hanging up on him because I didn't want to talk to him. At that point, I was like, you guys are ridiculous. So, like, I ended up just hanging up on him, and yeah, so.
I think you had reached out to me at that point, or maybe I reached out to you and you kind of explained what had happened.
Yeah.
And you had told me then that you had left messages with the prosecutor.
Yes.
Asking for hopefully like a conversation.
I called them because I went in after class. I think it was like the next day after I got the call, so on the 6th. After class, I went straight to the police department and walked in. I was like, I want to know what's going on. Like, why is there nothing being done? And that's when Sergeant Lapp was like, told me that I needed to just talk to the prosecutor. I called them 12 times that day. No answers. They didn't answer me a single time. I mean, I called them like, it wasn't even just back to back. It was like throughout the periodic of the day.
No, I've never called them. Did they have voicemail?
No, there was no voicemail. It said call back at another time.
So no one answered the phone.
No. So that's when I ended up emailing whoever you sent me.
It was Eric Stewart.
Yeah, I emailed him and I didn't get anything back. Basically, I just was like, I would just like to, have more questions. I have questions and would like more information about like this situation and why charges are not being pressed. Like, so, and then I didn't get anything back. And then, Jen Stanley, I think that was her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's a victim's advocate.
Yeah,
yes.
She ended up reaching out to me, texting me, and saying, like, she would be okay with taking a meeting with me, and a prosecutor. And I don't remember the prosecutor's name. They said it in the video.
Yes, I forget too. Yeah.
So then I met with them. Was that
Tuesday? Yeah, I think it was Tuesday. Yeah.
Tuesday. Yeah.
And how did that meeting? Well, you know what? I'm going to pause this.
Okay.
And then we'll pick up right with the next video.